Welcome everyone to sexandrelationshiphealing.com's educational series. We're delighted to have Charlie Risien with us, and this series is going to take us through the steps. So I'm going to ask Charlie to share a little bit about herself, and then we'll talk about how this series was created.
Hi, Tammy. Thank you so much. And for anybody out there, hello. My name is Charlie Risien. I live here in San Antonio, Texas, and I am a trauma therapist and an addiction therapist. So I've been doing this about 22 years. I also am getting my 29-year chip next week, if I make it that far. Yeah, in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have about 31 years in the Al-Anon program, and I still go to Al-Anon a lot. So I identify myself as an addict, just kind of across the board. So you know that old saying, which I have to, tell my clients, if you haven't done it yet, what yet stands for. So it's, don't ever think it can't happen, because people do cross lines they say they won't, and be careful of that. So I don't ever want to think that I couldn't get in trouble again or whatever, start something new, because I know that it's a brain disorder and I have it and I've always had it.
Absolutely.
I'm really clear about that and don't need to test that out. So today, and I did what I needed to do this morning to take care of my insurance, because the program tells us we have a daily reprieve, and it has to be done daily. So, yeah, about 22 years I've done this, and I do somatic experiencing. I am a certified brain spotter. I've had some EMDR training, and, a lot of PMLD, Terry Real, Patrick Carnes. A lot of really smart, good people have trained me. So I kind of have a eclectic balance of things that I do for people when they have a problem and they come in.
So tell me why you created this. I know we've got a workbook that's available on charlierisien.com, and I'll spell that out later. But yeah, tell me what was your purpose in creating this work that you've created?
Well, I thought years ago when I worked the steps, how there were very few materials that were around to work with, a sponsor with. So I created a packet for addicts. Like I kind of thought, if I got stranded on a deserted island and I had this information and a big book with me, could I sit down and get better? And the answer was yes. But I didn't write it for therapists. I wrote it for people who are struggling. So it's not perfect by any means, but it has helped a lot of people, I understand. And I wanted it to be easy, and I wanted it to be understandable. And then as the years went on and I learned more about the steps as I worked them and sought out information from other people, it just became clear to me that this needed to happen for addicts.
Well, I love that you've created something that people can refer back to, keep working through, regardless of if they have support. I also know for myself in recovery, it could be 2:00 in the morning and I needed to do something positive. So I love that you could engage with this process at any time of the day or night, regardless of whether someone was sitting right next to you helping you.
Yeah, thanks for getting that. That's kind of was my idea when I created that. So one of the things that's really important, in my opinion, which doesn't make me right, it's just my opinion, but was to understand the actual meaning of every word in every step. And of course, when I got to the program many years ago, I looked at those steps and I did what a lot of people do. They're like, oh, I'm not doing that 4-step thing. Like nobody's going to hear all that stuff, And the 9th step, yeah, good luck, because all those people owed me apologies and amends. I'm not going to go to all these people and tell them, about me. So, I had to get through all that, and I went to a lot of meetings, and I still do go to a lot of meetings. And I realized how important, as I went along through the years, each word has a meaning, and that Bill Wilson, as brilliant as he was when he wrote these words, the granddaddy of them all is our big book we call an AA. So I'll be referring to that some of the time, but I want people to understand that they can substitute their behaviors, their compulsions, their acting out, their acting in behaviors, wherever they need to. Okay. So, and we'll be talking about that a little more as we go along. But just like starting on step 1, the word we, it's the first word of the first step. And I ask people a lot of times, do you know how to define the word we? So what do you think people say?
I think they all say, yes, I know what we means.
Yeah, I know what we means. It's a funny little word. We've heard it all our lives. But the actual meaning of it is I and the rest of the group that includes me. So a lot of times in step one, I've had people write a paper for me and bring it in. So write me a paper about the word we, if you know so much about it. So then they realize, well, I really didn't understand the we. And what does we mean to a lot of people? I think a lot of people think that the we includes the group or the rooms that they're in, which it does, if that's how it is to you. It certainly can be I and the rest of the group that includes me. It's my meeting I'm sitting in, you know, and they say it only takes 2 people to have a meeting, right? So it could just be Tammy and Charlie having a meeting, which we've kind of done before and talked and been close and been intimate with one another and shared our worst parts and better parts and all that. So, you know, you're one of those people in my life that I dearly love that I can do that with. And
likewise.
Thank you. And so when people come in though, and they don't know people and you look around the rooms and you think, well, those people are crazy. I'm not saying that in front of them, or, you know, like, well, their story didn't match my story. I hear that all the time. It's like, and I said, no, I know you're not listening for the solution. Everybody's got a problem and it can sound really different, but it's still the same problem. The problem is addiction. So for me, what I've learned through the years is we has come to mean me and my higher power. Admitted we were powerless over, you know, lots of things I could put in that category, which we're going to talk about today on the first step. But we can mean the rest of the group. It can mean the door handle, you know, like a lot of people think it's like, well, it's just us. And it's like what you were saying, if you wake up at 2:00 in the morning and it's you in your bedroom or you in your blanket or whatever, that can be a we. And so the next word of the first step is admitted. We admitted. And what does it really mean to admit something? It actually means that you're conceding that it's valid and true. Now, these are words I've looked up and these are in the step packet. So I think it's important that you look through each one of these and not think you know the meanings of these, because it's really important to understand this. And if you really have somebody or some group that you can admit that this is what the first step is telling you to do, is like, until, you know, it's the only step you have to do perfectly.
Right.
Until you concede to your innermost self that you have this problem, that you can't stop drinking or using drugs or acting out sexually or being anorexic with something, or, you know, that's acting in.
Right.
It can be either way. Anything you're doing that's not healthy or moderate can be an addiction. So once you admit that you have a problem with that and you're reaching out to the whatever the we is, whether it's you and God, you and your friend, you and your spouse, you and the people in the room, you and your therapist, you're going to admit that, yeah, I have a problem with this. So you're saying to yourself, this is valid and true. And then it says that we were, and were is past tense, right? Powerless. So we hear that word a lot in these programs, don't we? We hear the word power and powerless. So let's look and see what that really means. What are we really saying to ourselves when we admit that we're powerless? And I used to think it was kind of the meaning of helpless, like, oh, I just have I can't do anything. I'm out of resources. But that's really what power means. It means that powerless means devoid of strength or resources. And so lacking authority or a capacity to act. In no way can you reach out with money, with fame, with people you know, with anything you've ever used in your life. If you're powerless, that's it. You have no way or capacity to act. So if you say that you admit you're powerless over something, what does that really mean? Because a lot of people don't understand this, and it's vital that you get what the word over means. So I used to think, well, how could it be that if I really wanted to, I have enough money, I could buy a liquor store, you know, I could go buy all the whatever I want, you know, how is it that I can sit here all day and talk about this and not be drinking anymore, or not be acting out anymore? Or if I'm a love addict, I'm addicted to my fantasy of a person, and all I did was think about them. And that took up a lot of time and space in my head, that love addiction stuff, because I had a big hole the size of me. I think you could hear the wind blowing through, because my parents, God love them, they were both alcoholics, but they abandoned me when I was little. I really didn't have any parents. I became the parent, which made me a love avoidant when I grew up. But my love addiction was, I was trying to fill that void or that emptiness with somebody. So the first person that came along and said, I love you, and yeah, you're all that, I'm like, all righty then, let's go. Let's do this. Let's get married. Let's do this thing. So basically the first person I ever dated, I married. I was not all of 19 back when I knew everything. So I didn't realize that I was powerless over that, over those thoughts, So what does it mean to be powerless over something? Well, I really did a lot of research on the word over. What I came up with was there's a couple of synonyms for over. It means done with, concluded, ended, finished, completed, gone, settled. But the one that I really love to put in there that I could really wrap my head around was the word over means after. So if I really admit that I'm powerless after I do something or think something or partake of something, my life becomes unmanageable. Not before, but after. Over it is what it really means. So that really helped me to understand how I could help other people understand that the step is asking me not to do something, because if I partake of it, I'm going to get unmanageable. It won't be long, and my life starts to, unfold again, right?
Right.
And decompose, because after I do something, it's where I put it back in my brain. So if it's alcohol and I take a little sip of something thinking, oh, it's just a little sip, or, how many people have that delusion? It's that first drink that gets us in trouble. It's like, how could one drink get you in trouble? It's because after you take that drink, then your brain says, thank you very much. You're giving me back my drug that I wanted. And now one's not going to ever be enough. I have to do more and more and more. And that's where eventually, it may not be that hour or that day, but eventually I'm going to be drinking again and drink too much and not want to put it down. And then all the complications from alcohol that happen in your body and mind and spirit become unmanageable. So what does that mean? That your life, well, what is your life? Because it talks about your life in the third step. It asks us to turn our life, our lives, and our will over again. Here we are after to the care is the big word in that step, up to God. But so let's look and see what our lives, what is the definition of your life? Well, it's a sequence of physical, mental experiences that make up the existence of a human being. So for me, that includes my past, which, I've already lived through every experience I've ever had. And it is the sum total of me, right? Whether I tasted it, smelled it, felt it on my skin, we have 5 senses, and everything that's ever happened to me is my life back there. Then there's the here and now, which is, I miss most of those years because I was living back there, beating myself up for not being perfect. Or I was living in the future, which is total insanity because it hasn't happened yet. But my predictor, that I used to be a really good psychic predictor, and it never came true, but my predictions were so outrageous about, well, I bet this is going to happen or that's going to happen, because I was basing a lot of my future on the past, which had not worked out so well. So I had to stop that and learn to, live in the here and now. And so what did they teach us in the AA program? One day at a time. So Charlie needs to come on back. Today is Thursday. I need to live in Thursday and see what is going to happen the rest of the day. I can think I might know what's going to happen, but I have to wait and see. So it's just something I have to practice a lot. So all this has to be practiced in your life. And it says in the book, for how it works, is that we don't have to be perfect, that we are not saints, but that we're willing, which is a spiritual principle, to grow along spiritual lines. So thank goodness for that, because I am certainly far from perfect. So the first step really opens that up for us, that we admitted we were powerless after put in love addiction, sex addiction behaviors, lust, drugs, you name it. We can become addicted to it if we're human and have a heartbeat, and or drugs, whatever, that our lives have become unmanageable. So what is the definition of unmanageable? Unmanageable says the definition is unable to handle or direct with any degree of skill, unable to treat with care. And if you look up the word care, which we're going to look at in the third step again, care means maintain, right? So everything in our lives, Tammy, we know, being women, we have to maintain our hair, our nails, our face, our house. We have to clean up things around us. We have to maintain our car, has to get oil in it and checked, and to go to the dentist and the doctor, and we have to treat with care our bodies, and our minds have to be treated with care. But I didn't know how to treat my mind with care. I just knew how to put myself down and shame myself and beat myself up for not being perfect. So a lot of addicts have perfection issues, and that's where it comes from not knowing how to care for their life, their past, present, and future. So what becomes unmanageable is I leave me out and maybe take care of somebody else to the degree that I forgot about me. And I have to learn to treat myself with care. So we see that a lot coming in the sex addiction program, don't we? We have, and Rob wrote a great book about that, Prodependence, about, don't treat everybody like they're the addict that comes in for treatment. They might be married to or in a relationship with, but they also just maybe need to learn how to care for themselves a little bit. And they're trying to care for this person they love. But the ABCs of the program tells us that, and I love the ABCs, it's in the big book, because it's the first thing I learned in school when I went to the first grade. A is that we were an addict and couldn't manage our own lives. And B, that probably no human power could have relieved it. And C, that God could and would if he were sought. And so I love that, because it doesn't say how we have to seek this higher power in our lives. It just says, just begin the process. Just seek God, and that's what we're doing when we start at step one. I think we're starting the process of seeking a power greater than ourselves in our lives. And I love that also that Bill Wilson was smart enough to say a power greater than myself, because this is not about religion. It's whatever your religion is, I respect it. If that works for you, that's great. But it says that there are a lot of powers in the universe that are greater than me, and I had to start looking at what that really meant, what that was, and how that worked in my life. So I think that if you really truly look at the first step, and I have some exercises for people to do in there, and they're just things to reflect that just sort of bring up the meaning of the first step, and realizing that whatever you put in that column of we admitted we're powerless over or after, whatever you put in there, that you begin to associate that with some of the unmanageability that's been in your life. So
I think one of the things that was really helpful for me too, when somebody shared, because I don't want to give up control. I don't want to be weak. I don't want all those things. But when they pointed out that I was giving all the control over to my addiction, it was in control. So it was, in fact, a higher power for me. So, right. So that was really helpful for me to go, oh, wait, I already did that. So then looking at, is there a better way to do this? Which of course there was. So that was really helpful for me as well.
Good. That's a good point. And some of these questions that I have, I just call them exercises, but like one is has this problem made your home life unhappy? Duh. But it wasn't in the first thing I thought of in my mind that, that the drinking was making my home life unhappy. I was making myself happy outside that by drinking, I thought.
Right.
So then I had to really get honest and really look at some of these things, and what payoff was I getting for continuing to do that? And had the problem caused any type of illness? And so any type of illness is different than just, oh, I just get sick and throw up if I drink too much, which I used to do from time to time. But I never linked that back to drinking. I just, I would have every denial excuse of, oh, I forgot to eat, or I shouldn't have eaten that, or, like all the rules we hear about the myths of alcohol. You should always drink a glass of milk before you go to a cocktail party, so you won't throw up, or you should always eat a sandwich, or it's like, yeah. And so I just thought it was that. I didn't realize that when I threw up and my body was telling me, excuse me, you're allergic to this. It's trying to get rid of it out of my body. And I was like, yeah, I just blamed it on everything but that. So yeah, there's some really good exercises in the step thing that you can look at, and you probably come up with some of your own too. But I actually have people write their chemical history or their love addiction history, or their sex addiction history in chronological order. So, in treatment, they do a lot of that now with the timeline, right? So you start at the beginning. It's a good thing to do for a first step. You start at the beginning of your life, age 0, all the way up to your age now, and try to list things on that line that are emotionally abusive and sexually abusive, and whatever it is that you need to put on your timeline. And it kind of helps give you a better picture in black and white of what you've actually been through. And abuse is one of those things that I learned from Pia Melody, is anything less than nurturing. So man, when I read that, I'm like, oh, I've got a lot of things to look at in my own things I've done that were less than nurturing. But putting that in chronological order is the drinking things. How many times did I get in trouble? And what's that old saying, Tammy? We didn't get in trouble every time we drank, but every time we'd been in trouble, we knew we'd been drinking, right?
Yeah, yes,
or acting out, or
yes,
again, substitute whatever your behaviors are. But yeah, you can look at that. It's like, no, you don't get caught every time, but pretty much every time you were in trouble, you can look and link it back to, I was doing something I really shouldn't have been doing that wasn't good for me or anybody else. So then you write down 10 things that have happened that show you're powerless over this stuff. And then you write 10 things that show, that you, how your life became unmanageable because of those things. And so those are all good things that kind of bring out the first step. And a lot of people that go to therapy read that to their group, or, and in treatment, they'll have you read your first step out loud, and you have a really detailed part of your life that you look at to see where all that unmanageability and powerlessness is. And then I guess the last thing I want to say about step 1 is we will be talking about this as we go along for each step. There are principles involved, spiritual principles involved in working these steps. And so that's why they are spiritual in nature. And each time you work a step, you grow spiritually. So that's the beauty of them. And a lot of people have asked me through the years, is going to 12-step program the only way to get sober? And I say, no, absolutely not. It's not the only way, but in my opinion, it's the quickest, fastest way to get well. Because if you really do work these steps in your life, you're going to have a spiritual experience. And that's in the 12th step. That's a promise that says we have a spiritual experience based on working the steps above us, so I wanted that spiritual experience. I thought I had one, and people may have had some in their life, but we have to have it on this addiction to get better from it and to want to be in recovery from it, I think. So we'll talk about the principles that are practiced along with this step. And I believe they are honesty, because you have to get honest to work this step. And that's like, stop looking out here and start looking here. Honesty with myself about what's really going on. Powerlessness is a spiritual principle. Practicing knowing when I have no resources or capacity to act, I can just sit back. And that's where I found out where God can do his work. Because like you were saying earlier, when you have this illusion of control and you think you're in control of everything, you're the higher power. You're playing God. It talks about that on page 62 on the big book too, about how we have to quit playing God. And it was like, what? What do you mean? I don't play God. It's like, yeah, you do. So looking at that, understanding what that really means really helped me too. To admit that I'm powerless and I can just sit back and leave it alone and see what the universe has for me. And then acceptance. Acceptance is a spiritual principle. And when we accept something, it's like just sort of admitting, it's conceding that it's true and valid. And I don't have to like it. I can be angry about it. I can have my feelings about it, but I'm going to accept that that's the way it is, at least for now, because it can change. And surrender. Like I tell this to people all the time, look, just put your sword down. Just stop, wielding that sword around, trying to, you get really tired. If you picked up a big knife and moved it around a lot, you'd be so tired. And that's what I was when I came. I was just tired and I didn't know how to do it any other way. And then humility, and that means to remain teachable. Being humble means admitting, I don't know everything. I need help. I need you to show me your way. And then I can decide for myself. But humility is a really good spiritual principle to have. When you work this step, you have to get humble because you're looking at your own flaws, your own powerlessness over things. So is there anything else you want to add? I just want to add one more thing.
Oh, okay. Well, I wanted to go back to the timeline. I really love that you identified any places where it was less than nurturing, because a lot of people, and including myself, wouldn't identify things that happened to me technically as abuse, because we think of, really violent, harmful abuse. But the neglect is one of those things that is, the less than nurturing. And then my timeline would be a whole lot more complete if I look at places where I didn't feel supported, there wasn't bandwidth in my family to all of those things, bullying at school, whatever, those would be. It would be on my timeline, but if I just thought of abuse, my timeline would have like hardly anything. So that's
right.
I think really helpful. And I think one of the things that a lot of people, I agree with you, having had a spiritual experience as the result of these steps, which is 12, which we'll get to. And that was the most meaningful for me. But when I first started the journey, it was like, I was defeated. I needed, I was able to surrender because I didn't have anything else. All the tricks that I had tried hadn't worked, and here's where I was. But if somebody had said, well, you're going to have a spiritual experience, I was like, that's meaningless to me. All I care about is how do I do something different, because, I don't know how not to use my addiction, but that's not working for me anymore. So for those of you out there that are going like, well, I don't care about a spiritual experience, hang in there. It's a benefit. And if you follow these steps, life will get different. And then that will probably have significant meaning for you. But for right now, this will help you find a different way to live so that you're not causing the same chaos that living in the addiction does.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I did the same thing when I first worked on the first step. I wasn't looking for any particular spiritual experience. I always thought they were crazy when they were talking about stuff like that. But I knew that what I was doing was not working. So right. For all the people that are listening to this, what you're doing, if you're listening to this, probably is not working. So the best thing to do is find somebody you trust, even if it's just this podcast. Find somebody you trust, and do what they tell you to do. And that's the other reason I wrote this packet. It's like, you do these things, whether you want to or like to or believe, you don't have to believe this stuff. That's the greatest thing I ever got, was just do it, Charlie. You don't have, because I kept saying, I don't believe that. And they're like, that's okay. Just do it. And I did it, and it worked anyway. It'll work anyway. So I'm glad you said that, because the willingness is the principle here of just be willing to do something. You don't have to understand it. You don't have to get it. And you don't have to believe it for it to work. That's the beauty of it.
Right.
So that's fabulous. But anyway, one other little thing I wanted to say was I do have a candle going the whole time here today. And this is done in a lot of our meetings that we do, which is to honor the people who are out there still suffering. And I know there are people. And so I just wanted to know that I do light that candle in honor of the people that are suffering. And I wish all of you the best out there to work these steps and to have that beautiful spiritual experience come your way, and to get to know your higher power.
Agree. So stay tuned to this series. We're going to do all of the steps. So this is step 1. You can reread or rewind it and watch it again. And then we're going to go on to step 2.
Okay. Thanks.